if the Americans were not insisting on this, when I say the Americans, it's a handful of bureaucrats and a few congressmen. Well, everybody else is just worried about Iraq and Iraq and also Iraq. That this policy would not go any further. The Europeans on their own would not push this policy forward. It's people in the United States that do so. On the 17th of April, there was a hearing in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, chaired by Tom Lantos, who is a very well-known friend of Israel. And he said in that hearing that he wants to make sure that the entire Islamic world, not only responsible governments like Indonesia, but also jihadists of all color and hue, take note of the fact that here in Europe is an example where the United States is standing foursquare behind the creation of a Muslim country in the heart of Europe, as if we're going to impress the Muslims with our goodwill, and even the jihadists with our goodwill by claiming this. During the hearing, Undersecretary of State Nicholas Burns, one of the handful of officials that is driving this policy, referred repeatedly not to Albanians in Kosovo, but to Muslims in Kosovo, that we are doing this to help Muslims, and we want the rest of the world to know this. Congressman Wexler from Florida made the same point. On the Senate side, Senator Joe Biden, the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has made the same point in a column in the Financial Times. Dana Rohrabacher, congressman from California. John McCain is a very strong supporter of Kosovo independence. There are people who have very serious delusions about what we are facing globally in terms of jihad terror, because indeed, the jihadists will be impressed if we were to hand Kosovo to the Albanian Muslims, but not impressed about how wonderful we are. They will be impressed about how weak we are and how cowardly we are and stupid we are, that we're willing to hand over as a sacrifice to them these places where these churches have been destroyed. By the way, hundreds of mosques have been built by Saudi Arabia, spreading the Wahhabist brand of Islam in this part of the world, which is radical even by local standards. To give you another example of the kind of foolishness we're talking about, we received a news report a couple of days ago while we were here in Israel from the Detroit Free Press, which is the major newspaper in Detroit, one of the areas where we have the largest concentrations of Arabs and other Muslims in the United States, that the State Department is sponsoring a visit to the United States by a top Muslim cleric from Kosovo to meet with Muslim communities in the United States and with organizations like the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, which I'm sure many of you have heard of and you know plays a very negative role in American politics, to help mobilize the Muslim community in support of their policy for independence for Kosovo. And also he urged them to be better Muslims, to promote Islam in America. And he says that Kosovo independence is necessitated because of the blood of shaheeds in Kosovo. I think that, and our reason, one of our main reasons for coming here to Israel is that the defeat of this agenda on Kosovo will be a great catalyst in waking up the rest of the world to what is really at stake with the global jihad problem, as it applies to Israel, as it applies to other countries. Conversely, if this were to go forward, if they can say to Serbia today, you must give up Kosovo, they can say to Israel tomorrow, you have to not only give up Judea and Samaria, which have never been annexed by Israel, you have to give up Galilee too, which is part of sovereign Israel by everybody's standards, but if they can take part of Kosovo, which everybody recognizes as part of Serbia, what's to tell the international community, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, you have to do that. All they have to do there is get violent enough and intolerant enough to make the case that they must be given independence, because otherwise there will be more violence. So it's very important to us in the United States that our friends here in Israel are known, that they speak out and are heard by people in the United States, because people in America value Israel's opinion on this. They know that Israel does have the frontline experience with this kind of terrorism. And I think if more and more people in Israel were to make their views known to people in the United States, and as you know, there are many contacts between the two countries because of the special relationship, this could have a profound effect on America. Maybe in the questions and answers we can talk a little more about what's going on, why this policy, actually I think there's a good chance of defeating it, but right now I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues.
Before we turn to Julia Gorin, let me add that one of the reasons we are here is exactly because so many declared friends of Israel in the United States are not amenable to our arguments when they come from a source that is tainted by any connection to Serbian sources. They do not want to listen to arguments that are based on reason, on law, on eminently acceptable modes of analysis, for as long as those sources are in any way connected with what they perceive to be discredited and otherwise unacceptable link with the survey.
What is the timeline from now on?
The timeline is, if you listen to the Friends of Kosovo Independence, it is now. We cannot wait. The proponents of Kosovo independence are saying, these poor people have been waiting 8 years since the end of the bombing in '99, and they're running out of patience. You know, it's absurd but true that in 2004, when on 17th of March, the Albanians rioted, the churches went up in flames, thousands of Serbs were expelled. The immediate gut reaction of Tom Lantos and a few other commentators was to say that the violence was inevitable because of the stubborn refusal of the Serbs to accept the inevitable, which is independence. So it's not their fault. They're just poor, frustrated people. It's like justifying crime because of the social underprivileged status of the poor victim. The victim is the one who is holding the gun.
By the way, there's a good point there. During the hearing, another congressman opposed this policy asked the question. He said, wait a minute, 8 years. You say 8 years. The Israelis and the Palestinians, they haven't been able to work out things for decades. Do we say that because so much time has passed, we need to come in and impose a solution and tell them what solution they must have? Of course, the answer was, well, Kosovo is unique. So,
but what is Ahtisaari's and the
can
Security
we
Council?
have Q&A later?
Okay.
Yeah, well, yes.
I really
the
wanted
short answer is as fast as they can, but they've got problems. We'll explain it.
I wanted to introduce Julia Gorin by mentioning that one of the pillars of anti-Semitism through the decades has been the myth of the monolithic and centralized Jewish conspiracy against the rest of the world. And we are painfully aware of the extent to which actually many Jews are not only divided on peripheral or relatively peripheral issues, as it may seem, like Kosovo, but even on the central issues of identity, of civilizational continuity, of the strategy needed to defend the legacy. And I think someone who, by virtue of being Jewish American, has more right to point out this stupidity and gullibility than anyone else is Julia Gorin, who does it both brilliantly and without too many inhibitions that the rest of us.
Well, also pointing out that Julia is in fact the perfect example of America. She's a Jew born in Russia and lives in Las Vegas.